we've all been educated this year to learn that electronic record retention rules come out of the Secretary of State's office. And so I'm interested in hearing from each of you your feeling about whether there needs to be revisions made to those rules, and if so, in which direction you believe you'll go in attacking that challenge. Thank you.
This question goes first to Mitch Hubbard.
Well, my position on using electronics to retain records, it is a good thing that we need to work toward. We need to make sure that those records are stored in such a way that we do not lose that information, but it allows us to store the information without taking up so much space in storage, so I would support that. But we need to make sure that the backup systems we have are effective and that we do not lose Missouri's information. And that's my position on that.
Robert Carney.
You know, I grew up in a family that was dedicated to public service. And one of the things about being a public servant is you're answerable to the public. And part of being answerable to the public is to provide documents about how government decisions are made. And so it is vitally important that we continue these kind of programs that make sure we retain documents and the public and the press have access to those. Obviously, there have been lots of problems with that in the past. And I will tell you, when it comes to email and electronic documents, they are no different in terms of what has to be retained than if it's written on a piece of paper or if it's on any kind of a memo. If it's a relevant document to be kept about public records, it has to be kept. It doesn't matter what form it comes in. I think that's a good idea. And each state agency has a record retention schedule. We have one in the Secretary of State's office. Every state agency has it. But we need to make sure is that people actually comply with that. We do in my office. I'll always do that in my office. And I think others need to as well.
Wes Upchurch.
Regarding record retention, it's important to realize that it doesn't matter whether it's backed up electronically or if it's on paper, but there does need to be a duplicate backup. And as an information security professional, our company ensures that we always we upload all of our data to a backup server in an off-site location, and it's stored there encrypted in case something should happen to the original center where the data is stored. And I think that the government needs to make more of an effort to not retain the records just in the individual offices of each administration, but at an off-site location somewhere else as well. And that's something that I would make sure happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
My name is Doug Cruz. I'm with the Missouri Press Association. Currently, state law allows for non-elections. Over the last few years, the legislature has allowed school boards and fire district boards and nonpartisan elections like that. If there's 3 spots open for the board and only 3 people run, then there's no election. And this eliminates things like write-in votes. I mean, they declare a winner much earlier than the election day. It really doesn't promote civic responsibility for people to come and vote election day. Do you support these non-elections?
This question goes first to Robert Carney.
You know, it's a good question. I think it goes deeper than just the issue of non-elections because I'm sure it came up because of cost. You know, that costs were high to put these elections on and turnout was low, and what do you do about that? And this was their response. I don't think that's the appropriate response, but I think there are other things we can do to help municipalities and local governments cut costs when it comes to elections. In particular, I think we need to look at the options of mail voting. You know, in some states, they do all mail-in voting. In Missouri, local governments are allowed to do that if they would like to in local elections. And I think that's something that we should explore more because I think it could cut costs for local governments and increase participation. So that's just one of the sort of innovative things I think we can do to make voting more convenient for folks. You know, the reason we vote on a Tuesday in November, I don't know if any of you know this, is because it used to be an agrarian society, and so November was convenient for people. It wasn't planting season or growing season or harvest season. And it was on a Tuesday. You know why? Because it wasn't church day. And folks had to drive by horse and buggy to get into town in order to vote. Wednesday was market day. Sunday was church day. They could travel on Monday, vote on Tuesday. It was convenient. So I think we need to be thinking about how to make it more convenient to vote and not make it so we have fewer elections.
Wes Upchurch.
Well, I think the problem with these non-elections where there's only one contender or there's the same number of contenders for a particular office as there are seats for that office isn't that people don't want to vote or don't have the ability to vote. I think the problem lies in there not being an option that the people of Missouri agree with. And the way that you resolve that is you put a NOTA option. That stands for none of the above on the ballot. And if NOTA wins the majority or plurality, then NOTA is going to become elected. That means that nobody will be selected for that particular office. That there would be a re-race and another election would be ran to find somebody suitable for the office. Thanks.
Mitch Hubbard.
Well, I've got to say on that issue that it is frustrating when you have an election and you don't have a slate of candidates where you have actually a competitive election. That is very frustrating. So I think the first thing we need to do is work in our communities to get more civic responsibility so that we have more people running for those offices. But at the same time, we have to use reason. If there is not going to be a result from our vote, why would people want to go vote? If you know that you're going to vote for somebody and they're going to win regardless, why would you want to drive to the polls or even mail in a vote for that? It doesn't make sense. So I think the focus we need to have is to get people more civically involved. And we can do that through our schools, our colleges, and through civic groups, not necessarily through the government. I do disagree with mail-in voting as well, because again, that increases fraud out. So I have to make that point. But other than that, I think that we need to use common sense in this.
We're going to have a 30-second rebuttal here for everyone, because there were two new issues raised there. One, would you support a statewide mail-in ballot for an election? And two, would you support the option of a none of the above possibility on ballot? Robin?
You know, I was smiling at your none of the above thing. I understand why people might be frustrated and want to do that. But you know what? We elect people. Government is not something that's imposed on us. It's something we choose. And we have to be responsible to do that. And I think going in and taking an easy option of voting for none of the above because you haven't paid enough attention isn't a good option. I also think it's not a good option to say, for example, we don't need a governor. Let's see if government can function without it. I think that's not a good option. I also don't think it's a good option to have to make another election because that costs money. So I'm not wild about that. The notion of statewide mail-in, there are several states that do that now. The secretaries of state in those places are like evangelists talking about how good it is and how much cheaper it is and how much better the participation is. I quite frankly like Election Day. I think it's a civic activity that we should continue in our state, but I think for folks where they need to have the convenience of this, that there are some sensible ways to do it. And with regard to absentees and fraud, there is a higher incidence of problems and absentee ballots, but I'll tell you, in Missouri, you still have to have those notarized. So it's not like just anybody's going to go and vote an absentee ballot, because you have to go and have that notarized and prove who you are before you can vote that ballot.
What's up, Church? Rebuttal period.
Well, regarding the mail-in ballots, I agree that it would increase voter fraud, and it's not something that Missouri needs. And as Robin says, it is a civic activity to go vote, and it's something that we should be encouraging people to do. Now, on the NOTA issue, the reason I support it isn't so people can go in and go, well, I don't know. I think it's an insult when a candidate says, well, the people of Missouri don't know what they're voting for, so they're going to vote none of the above. I mean, and I think that people that are going to take the effort to go to the polls and cast a none of the above option are doing it because they disagree with the choices.
Mitch Hubbard.
Well, I've already expressed my opinion on these. On the first one, mail-in voting, I'm opposed to that because it would increase fraud, and I believe that we need to go to the polls and actually cast the vote there if we're able to. Second, the none of the above, I am strongly 100% opposed to that because we have people that are working to be on the ballot. They spend a lot of time and energy, and it is basically copping out if you don't vote for one of those individuals. I would much rather support somebody writing a candidate and voting for them as opposed to voting for nobody. So I'm strongly opposed to that.